What's the most appropriate thing to say when meeting the Prime Minister? Obviously, asking for a raise. What do you do when a mission doesn't go well? You just pack up and leave. That's the kind of unit this is rough in thinking, with barely any restrictions on behavior. But surprisingly, its combat effectiveness and wilderness survival rate are astonishingly high. The famous Bear Grylls came out of this unit. We've covered plenty of special forces before, but somehow left out the SAS. Today, let's fix that. The SAS, full name the Special Air Service, was the first unit in human history built for special missions in special environments, the ancestral origin of every modern special forces unit. Whether it's the U.S. Navy SEALs, Delta Force, or the werewolves of other nations, all of them essentially trace their roots back to Britain's SAS. The SAS operator's casual attitude isn't just down to seniority, it's largely because, to this day, they still hold the highest mission completion rate of any Special Forces unit in the world. On April 30th, 1980, 6 armed men, faces fully covered except for their eyes, stormed the Iranian Embassy in London and took 22 people hostage, including diplomats. They demanded Iran release their comrades held prisoner back home. Iran, hearing this, figured it wasn't really their problem. Surely things could be talked over. A ransom arranged, as long as no one got hurt. But as it turned out, Iran didn't believe a word Britain said, convinced the whole thing was a British staged plot, and refused to even engage with the gunmen. With that road closed, Britain sent police negotiators in first. Once the SAS got word, they immediately began drawing up a rescue plan. True to form, the mother of the world's special forces did things properly. In a very short time, they built a full-scale wooden mock-up of the embassy to rehearse every contingency. The final plan: 3 teams moving simultaneously, 2 entering through the front and back doors, while a third blew out the windows and breached from the side, catching the gunmen in a 3-way pincer. Unexpectedly, London's city government rejected this seemingly perfect plan. The Iranian Embassy was a Grade 2 listed building, they said, and could only be entered by cunning, not stormed and damaged. Hearing this, the SAS operators figured these officials had lost their minds worrying about a building at a time like this. Without a word, the whole unit packed up and started walking out. Logically, if Plan A failed, shouldn't soldiers offer a Plan B? Instead, they just left. As the SAS operators walked farther away, looking like sulking spouses, panicked officials rushed to stop them. Fine, we'll do it your way. Blow the windows if you must. And so the operation proceeded as planned. At 7 p.m., a hostage was thrown out of a window, with the gunmen threatening to kill another every 30 minutes if demands went unmet. Seeing they were serious, the SAS moved up the timeline. At 7:23 p.m., with a second hostage about to be killed, 8 operators rappelled from the roof to the 2nd and 3rd floor balconies, blasted the windows, and threw in stun grenades. Then came the charge gunmen still reeling from the blasts were cut down instantly. Meanwhile, the other 2 teams breached the front and back doors, locating the gunmen's leader in 3 seconds and neutralizing him in 1. That legendary 4-second CQB training paid off. The result? Every hostage and every SAS operator survived unharmed. The gunmen suffered 5 dead, 1 wounded. Clean and efficient. The BBC broadcast the whole rescue live, and from that moment, the SAS became world famous. The operation became a case study for special forces worldwide, and its imagery even shaped video games Counter-Strike, being the obvious example. Afterward, the operators were personally received by Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Normally, such visits involve pleasantries: how's the food, the housing, the family? But these operators skipped all that. In front of everyone, they bluntly asked Thatcher when they'd be getting a pay raise. That's the real story behind the refusing orders, demanding a raised reputation. Whether it's tactics or temperament, these people go straight to the point, sometimes awkward, but effective. Beyond sheer confidence from their combat record, this attitude also traces back to the unit's history. The SAS's predecessor was the Commando, formed by Britain during World War II. With Germany overrunning France and Britain likely next, the British refused to surrender without a fight, but after Dunkirk, the army had abandoned nearly all its heavy equipment. Some soldiers made it home with barely more than their underwear. What were they supposed to fight with? Someone proposed fighting covertly instead, small units infiltrating behind German lines, burning supply depots, blowing up ammunition dumps, wearing down morale from within. Feasible in theory, but the real challenge was getting soldiers back out alive, or helping them survive behind enemy lines if they couldn't. So came another idea. Gather the best all-around personnel from every branch to form a special unit for operations behind enemy lines. All-around back then meant more than running fast and shooting straight. It meant wilderness survival, camouflage, offense, but also mundane skills like building shelters, repairing vehicles, even yoga and ballet. Yes, yoga and ballet really were required. Yoga helped operators endure extreme desert heat. Ballet trained exceptional balance. Once assembled, the Commando carried out relentless behind-the-lines operations, especially in North Africa, blowing up fuel depots, raiding airfields, throwing the German rear into chaos, striking like ghosts. Furious but unable to stop them, Hitler issued the infamous Commando Order. Any captured commando fighter, uniformed or not, armed or not, surrendered or not, was to be executed on sight. Harsh as it sounds, from a battlefield logic standpoint, it wasn't unreasonable. These fighters would keep trying to escape or take enemies down with them if left alive. So immediate execution was, brutally, the simplest option. After the war, the Commando was reorganized into the SAS with even stricter selection standards. Applicants already had to be elite from the Army, Navy, or Air Force just to submit an application, and even then, acceptance stayed under 20%. One test alone requires carrying a 25 kg load, 64 km, within 20 hours, but merely finishing isn't enough. You must place in the top 20. That demands stamina, survival skill, and disciplined pacing all at once. Once admitted, training remained distinctive alongside standard weapons and driving instruction. Recruits still trained in ballet, yoga, ballroom dancing, even professional certifications, all to build both extreme environment survival skills and convincing cover identities. A SAS operator standing beside you might look exactly like a driving instructor or a school security guard, and you'd never know otherwise. The results speak for themselves: expert disguise, extraordinary combat skill, and CQB engagements completed within 4 seconds, without exception exactly the standard met during the embassy rescue. Today, SAS headquarters sits in Hereford, with 3 regiments overseeing multiple squadrons, totaling roughly 900 personnel. Since they never openly recruit soldiers, must apply themselves, the exact number remains uncertain. Since 1980, the SAS has held the reputation of the world's premier special forces unit. Though purely in raw combat strength, U.S. units like SEAL Team 6, the Green Berets, and Delta Force could hold their own. But the SAS has another distinction its members take pride in: the highest mission completion rate anywhere. U.S. Special Forces are typically either counterterrorism specialists or combat specialists, rarely both, and almost never involved in domestic urban rescues that's police work. If the Iranian Embassy crisis had happened in America, SWAT or the National Guard would have handled it. No special forces required. The SAS is different. Beyond combat and counterterrorism, they handle urban violence, fires, gas leaks, train derailments, missing aircraft tasks normally left to police and emergency services. More work means more data, and that world-leading completion rate is built largely on this breadth. None of this diminishes their combat strength. If anything, it highlights their versatility. Even today, special forces worldwide still have plenty to learn from the SAS. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe and hit like. See you next time.